superintendent of secondary schools.
All right, folks.
I think that's part of the plan.
Let's go ahead and get started here. Thank you for coming tonight. I want you guys all to know that we, by far, have the best attendance for any of these town hall meetings. Thank you, Dr. Stout. I'm sure you had a lot to do with this. So that makes me proud. That makes me proud. So you guys probably all know who I am already, but I'm Daniel Call. I'm the trustee for District 7, the Coronado feeder pattern, and vice president of the board of trustees. So we have the next hour or so to talk about what you guys want to see in our next superintendent. And by virtue of the fact that you're here, I'm sure you all know that this is probably going to be the most consequential thing that I do in the 4 years that I'm a trustee. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about that and what you want to see. So just by a show of hands here, it's kind of hard to see with the lights on me, but how many people want to speak? So I want to make sure that we divide the time properly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So it's I want to keep it as informal as we can. So, but I want to make sure that I give everybody a chance to speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give 7 minutes for each person, and if you have some comments that you want to give to me for the full 7 minutes, that's fine. If you want to give, some comments, if we have time, I'll probably ask you follow-up questions and kind of have a back and forth to dig a little deeper in what you guys are thinking about the superintendent search process. So I'll keep time here so that we give everybody a chance to speak. So who would like to go first? Brave soul. Yes, thank you. And please introduce yourself too, because I know several of you, but it's kind of hard to see here.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Great. So my name is Stephanie Deming. I have a freshman and a junior here at Coronado.
Okay.
And I'll just say I'm very pleased with the education they're getting and the social environment here. I think it's fantastic. So hats off to Mr. Escareno, teachers, staff, administrators. Super happy.
Good. Glad to hear that.
I have just 2 requests for you and your fellow board members, and these may be things that you're already planning to do. First of all, when you write the contract for the new superintendent, I would like to make sure that it forbids outside employment, and ideally I would like to forbid outside consulting. If that's not possible, I would like to have limits on outside consulting. You may already be planning that. Number 2 is that I would like you and your fellow board members to consider putting a clause in the contract. I don't know if this is possible, but I think it would be fantastic if the superintendent on the first business day of each month sent the board 1 paragraph or 1 page affirming that they have abided by the terms of their contract in terms of outside employment and consulting, if that's allowed. If you do allow consulting, that they just say, this is the consulting I did, this is the approximate number of hours. I'm not talking about a super big report. This should not be a time sink for them, shouldn't detract from their other work. 1 paragraph, 1 page. That's what I would like.
Wow.
Thank you.
Well, do you mind if I react to those 2? Okay. So I have a funny little anecdote that you'll appreciate. So I was talking to Dr. Dixon, who's heading our search team for the new superintendent, and I was talking to her the other night, and she was telling me that several of the superintendent candidates asked her, hey, how do you think this board feels about consulting on the side or having employment on the side? And she said, I think if you ask them that, they'll kill you. So, judging by, I'm only going to speak for myself, but I don't think there's any appetite for any type of distraction. This is a beast of a job. I joke with our interim superintendent that you couldn't pay me, enough to take that job. It's a beast, and I can't see how anybody could remain focused on the district while consulting or being employed outside of that. But I also love your second suggestion about some type of periodic affirmation that they're abiding by the terms of their contract. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? You still got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
I'll take her 2 minutes.
Come on up.
Yes,
Let's
great.
do it.
This will be fast because it's in relation to that. So one of the areas that I was concerned
Introduce
with.
yourself for me.
Hi, yes, my name is Marisela Padilla, and I have a senior here at Coronado, and kudos to Mr. Escareño because it's a great school. Thank you. So, what I was concerned with is I'd like for this process to include transparency in existing contracts that the candidate is currently engaged with that would interfere with his or her employment, and I think it goes along with the doing outside work or consulting. I was also concerned with whether this process allows for questions about any pending litigation that the candidate might be currently involved with. And that was my concern.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, so in addition to what Ms. Deming said, you wanted to add just a basic blanket check for any type of pending litigation.
Pending litigation, and also I was concerned with the amount of any outside work or consulting.
Sure.
It's been a bit of a problem in El Paso, and so I'm concerned with that, and I'd like for there to be no option for that. Like you said, I think this is a big task.
It is.
And we need to do a good job with that.
It is.
Okay.
So thank you, Ms. Padilla.
Thank you. Thank you very
I
much.
appreciate that, yeah. So that's going to be towards the top of my priority list when we're crafting a superintendent contract. One thing I really like about our current folks that we have doing our superintendent search, they weren't my first choice, but there was our former agreement with another search through the Texas Association of School Boards had to back out because of the conflict of interest. So they weren't my first choice, but I have been pleased with them. And one of the things that they've suggested to us is that we start working on the terms of the contract before we get a candidate. That way we know where our red lines are, and we know we have a very good idea of what we expect of our next superintendent. So thank you. All right, who's next?
Hi, I'm Kathy Anderson. I'm a retired teacher. I taught in El Paso district for 20 years, and almost the entire 20 years we were in the midst of a scandal or a crime. I'm making a timeline of it right now. I've been studying back, Salamana, Carlos Cordova, the architect at Brown Middle School, the contractors at Brown Middle School. All of this was just one big pile, a chain of corruption, I guess you could call it. So when you have these 60-minute conversations with the candidates, I would like to know that they understand the history of this district and what they're coming into and the challenges that they're going to face in preventing that from happening again. Because a big pile of public money, taxpayer money, is very tempting to some people. And people have been tempted time and again in this district. So if you could have that conversation with them, I'd appreciate it. I'd also like to have, my favorite thing would be to have somebody homegrown, but I don't know your list, so I can't really tell, right? But think about it.
I will. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. All things being equal, I would love to have somebody local. I would hate to have a fantastic candidate that isn't local and turn them down just because of that one reason.
That's the same thing that Leah said.
Yeah. I want to have as open mind as possible to any potential candidate. But you're absolutely right about this temptation and with the two superintendents the former superintendent and our interim superintendent, I had the same conversation with both of them as soon as we started working together. And I said, look, I understand that people are human. I understand people make mistakes, but the thing that I expect of you is that you're always going to be truthful about it. If there's a screw up at the district, if somebody drops the ball somewhere, if that person happens to be you, just be forthcoming about it. And we can get out in front of it, and hopefully we can salvage whatever situation that happens to be. But I'm with you. If there's deceitfulness or if there's greed or corruption involved, I don't have much tolerance for that. So thank you. Yes.
Hi, Orlin Lex, also a retired educator. I very much wanted to support the comments of the first speaker, Ms. Deming, which I was also going to say that, but the other thing I wanted to mention is I would very much hope it be a career educator, not a lawyer, not a dentist, not someone whose certification is pending, someone who's ready to go from day one and who has experience at different levels of teaching in school administration. That they be here not to defend the district from lawsuits, but to stop lawsuits from happening in the first place because they're doing their job well.
Amen.
Yeah. And I also would love it to be a local person, but I know that, I would like, ideally, my ideal candidate would be bilingual, would know the border region, but I understand that may not be possible.
We have plenty of time. Can you expand on why you feel that it's such an important thing to have a career educator versus, someone with sort of a maybe an unconventional career path?
Well, I think it's difficult for teachers to feel the confidence in a superintendent who hasn't been in their position, who doesn't know what it's like to be a teacher. As you said, it's a beast of a job. Administration in general, school administration is different. It's a different kind of job than any other kind of administrative position. And I don't, after all this school district has been through in the last couple of decades, I don't really want us to have to wait too long for someone to get up to speed. And much less need to worry about them, if they're not certified yet as a superintendent, why are they even a candidate for this job? I'd really like it to be someone who's ready to go on day one and who knows what the people underneath him or her are dealing with and has experience standing in the position that they're working.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree that if you look at the job posting that we sent out for this actual position, pretty much everything you just said is specifically listed there. And the Board of Trustees were the ones who came up with the qualifications, and having a superintendent designation is one of those job requirements. So we're on the same wavelength here. The only deviation that I would even probably consider to those job requirements is if somebody happened to come along that was like a general or something in the military. But be that as it may, we have to stick with our job requirements, and we're requiring to have a superintendent designation. Yes, Mr. Miranda.
Javier Miranda, I'm a school teacher in the district and parent. I've been with the district since 1987. I echo what colleagues and friends have said about our scandal, the scandal that we've seen with superintendents and boards of trustees. And now we see the influence of CREED, an organization that seeks to privatize our public education system, whether it's through the District of Innovation initiative at the state level or at the local level, right? So when you asked Orlin here about why it's important to have an educator, right now we are facing issues in the classroom level such as a critical race theory that limits what we teach, although we don't teach critical race theory. But it's important for programs such as the Mexican American Studies, the diversity and culture classes, our history, world history, and U.S. history. So we need a superintendent that's going to support us as educators in teaching what we're supposed to be teaching, according to the TEKS and the standards, right? So we also have faced a declining enrollment in our district for the last few years, given to all the scandals perhaps, and morale is low, teacher attrition is high. We're still saddled with quite a few initiatives from the district, from the previous administrator, where we're still beholden to contracts on pedagogically unsound reforms, ed tech reform and curriculum reform, right? And so we need an educator that's going to be advocating for us and build capacity from within the district. Build leadership from educators, not folks that are business folks, not folks that are discards from other districts. And as we said before, we don't need a person that's going to be taking a neoliberal approach to running education. We are not a business. It's a calling for a lot of us. And our children are not little cogs. And so that's why we need a person that has an educational experience. And to your point, as far as the consulting that some of the folks have brought up, the board was responsible for allowing some of these contracts and consulting jobs to be allowed to be undertaken by our superintendent, the previous one. And I think that we also need a commitment from you folks to help us out with that. And as far as, we need an educator that's going to protect us during the pandemic, post-pandemic and right now. And so at this point, and I see Principal Escarena here, we haven't talked about what's going on with our kids. These kids felt isolated, they were anxiety, the depression, and now that we've had them for 9 weeks or 11 weeks, we see a drop in their reading and their comprehension levels, and we've not yet addressed that. Individual teachers have, but we're getting all these top-down mandates, and we need to be allowed to teach, and we need to be empowered by our next superintendent. Thanks. The CRT. Okay, and then, of course, and we're going to discuss this tomorrow at the Bowie listening session, but the environmental issues that have been facing our kids at the south side, the south of the freeway, the bus barns, the toxic air, that's all been, thrust upon them, and our kids are an immigrant community is being victimized and exploited here. And with the whole District of Innovation, they've been identified as high priority schools where they can do all sorts of experimental things and leadership. And so at this point, we need to restore our district. We need to empower our teachers. We need to have someone that's going to be there for the kids. And not be beholden to creed. And so for those of you who do not know what creed is, that's an organization that seeks to privatize our public education system, either through infiltration of our district or externally. And I understand that the school board trustees, there's 3 or 4 of you folks that are beholden to them, given your campaign donations. And we understand that there's influence being exerted on them, by them, on you folks, to perhaps dismiss female candidates that are appropriately qualified. There's already been names that have been tossed out to, regardless of this show that we're putting on, when we have candidates that are willing to apply, but they're being told that they shouldn't even apply because Creed is not approving them. So I believe that this is a time for us to have our voice heard, and not just heard, you represent us. And it would be nice that we don't go just through the motions, but rather we be an integral part in this.